Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's Late Night Happy Hour. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky joined tonight by the host of the Light Years podcast on the Blue Wire Network, Sam Esfandiari. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited to do this. I wanted to note one thing. So I didn't know were you guys doing this before Shelter in Place began, or is this something you guys kind of launched
specifically because of Shelter in Place?
That's kind of what I thought, because I always think back to like the early, late March when everyone was kind of not really sure what this would look like, and I was just scanning social media way too much, and you guys were doing this every night, and I started getting a lot of comfort enjoying just these nightly shows, like to give you some semblance of normalcy when it was like it felt like the world was falling apart there for a while.
I mean, Sam, as we like to say very often, we are the real heroes, Brian and I, in terms of these difficult times that I'm not even going to say like, our audience has been going through and we've been helping them cope with. I would go so far as to say America, or really when you take into account that we are part of an internet culture and the internet spans the entire globe. Dare I say, we've comforted the entire world during this period. Like when they eventually do the history books and like Alex Gibney does a second documentary about the pandemic, I imagine we're going to be featured a lot.
I mean, that's the way I understood it. I heard like when the NBA was deciding whether they wanted the bubble or not, they were like, Andy and Brian are doing a show. Why can't we get games going? So
yes,
I would agree with you guys.
I'd like to think, except for the fact that I know we inspired them. Like we made them realize a lot was possible. Brian and I managed to do this show every night without, to the best of my knowledge, contracting the coronavirus. And I think they realized if these two guys can do this show while staying healthy, there's no reason we can't do a bubble.
So, I mean,
if two guys can do a show while everyone's sheltered,
from
why
their
can't
home.
we get 5,000 people organized?
What's really the difference? Other than maybe it's a little bit different scale. At the end of the day, it's both just showbiz. I mean, it's not really much different. By the way, you're being welcomed right now, just right off the bat, from Bertie Birdington. So this is what the biggest LeBron hater on the internet looks like.
I don't even.
So welcome, Sam.
I don't even think I cracked the top 100, but to each their own.
I mean, to be put in the same class as a Skip Bayless or
Jason Whitlock.
Yeah, I mean that is really impressive company.
I mean, I worked really hard at it over the last couple of years.
You've honed your craft.
That was the first thing. So
we do appreciate it, and you are welcome, America. You are welcome. I mean, to be honest with you, we started this because we were worried sort of about being sheltered and placed out of our jobs. Right. It's like you have to start figuring out like what can you do, and it's everybody in this moment that we're in, because even if you have a job, you keep your job, like you got to figure out, like it's not the same. Nothing is exactly the same, particularly if you work in media, and it's just a matter of figuring out like what else can you do. And it turns out what you can do is talk to people who have no one to talk to because they're trapped in their houses and can't leave and are really bored, and they're like, Andy and I were convinced it was gonna be like, do you think we'll be able to get people to come on and like stay for an hour? We're like, yeah, sure. This
kind of late.
Yeah, it's late. People got stuff to do. No, actually, turns out they don't, and it was handy.
And I actually think the late thing benefits you. I was kind of opining this on Twitter earlier today, where it's like, why are they putting playoff games at 2-3 in the afternoon? Like today specifically with the MLB. But I'm just sitting here. There's this assumption because people aren't going into their office, they can just sit around watching sports all day, and that just hasn't jived with my real life since it's kind of forced into the house on a regular basis here. It's just an inconvenience. Like even when I try to put it on, a million distractions, and like I don't have kids. I can't imagine the reality of someone who has children of any age and like more commitments in their life than I do, like trying to be like, not now, honey. I need to watch this 2 p.m. Orlando Magic Indiana baseball game.
The first couple days, the bubble games were on, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, this is it!" Or like you go back and like, ESPN's putting on Korean baseball. We got to watch it. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly like the game this afternoon, whatever it is. Like I caught the beginning of the Dodger game. I don't have time to do that. I have 3 kids, and so 2 of them are in school. You got to shepherd them through that. I got to get my work done, and there's been this huge, I guess, talking point about NBA ratings, and they were way down for the polls and all these other things. And there's a section of the world that wants to just pin it all on the NBA being too woke. And I mean, is some of that? I mean, is some of the politics driving? Yeah, I'm sure there's some people who are kind of turned off by it. But everything is down. Like the Kentucky Derby, like 11 people watched the Kentucky Derby. You know why? It's not because the horses were kneeling during the anthem. I mean, it's because the Derby.
That would be an adorable trick, by the way. If you could actually get the horses to kneel during the anthem, I don't care what your politics are. That's just cute. That's really, really cute.
It's impressive. It's because the Derby was held 4 months after it was supposed to, and nobody knew it was happening. The NHL ratings were down something like 65 or 70% for the Stanley Cup Finals, and there's 2 reasons for that. One, it was Tampa Bay versus Dallas, from what I read, and they were playing in Edmonton. So it's like there's no. I mean, you felt it here, or Andy. I mean, there's the buzz around the finals was even different because the games weren't being played in LA. The Dodgers stuff is different. It feels different because the games are being played in Texas. There's not that energy that comes with having your teams in the playoffs. All that stuff is way, way more, I think, has much more of an influence on why people weren't watching the NBA Finals. It's because it's fucking October. That's why they're not watching the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, that's an interesting point because obviously you guys are at the center of Laker fandom, and I can only imagine. I mean, I know what LA is like when the Lakers are good, just based off of my lifetime experiences during God knows how many of their previous title runs. But it's just, I can't imagine it because in the Bay Area, obviously the Warriors had pretty much the complete opposite of the season the Lakers had. And so when all this goes on, people who are sports fans have a casual interest, but unless you're an NBA diehard or have some sort of affinity to the teams, there isn't necessarily that draw that there would be for your random NBA finals in June or late May that didn't involve your team just because you're used to that cadence.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Maybe you guys disagree. Sam, you're probably in this position. If the Lakers hadn't made the finals, if it was,
Denver.
Miami versus Denver or something like that. If it was the Clippers, it would have been a little more engaged. Miami versus Denver, Miami versus Utah, whatever it is. I mean, I love the NBA. I cover the NBA for a living. People pay me to do this, and I would have been way less engaged. There's a good chance I would have missed the game, try to make it up if I have to, watch it, because the priority is different. They got to, you know what, I can go ahead and I'll drive the kids to soccer or whatever it might be. It's because it's not the same deal. It just doesn't. I mean, sports, it's amazing how quickly a person's habits can change. I think that's the lessons of the pandemic. Your work habits, your life habits, your TV habits, all of it can change a lot faster than you thought. And the stuff that you thought was 1,000% necessary isn't necessary. So just how they get it back on the rails.
And I was just going to say that the thing that probably sucks most for the Lakers, in this whole thing is obviously LeBron is year 2 in the Lakers. He's not, he's not Kobe. He's not someone who's been there for a decade plus. He doesn't have that attachment to the fan base.
He's no KCP.
Right, exactly. Those playoff runs are really what gets a fan base attached to a player. They, in the Bay Area here, if I was to poll Warrior fans, would you trade Klay Thompson for Giannis? Which everyone else in the country would say, yes, you do that because Giannis is a better player. They would probably overwhelmingly say, don't want to do it. Klay's our guy. Why? Because I mean, I don't need to go through the litany of big moments he's had for the Warriors, but that a lot of fan base attached to loyalty that's developed through those battles you've watched over the years. So that's like one thing LA did not get this year, which would have probably taken it to the next level, because it's one, like, I don't think anyone needed to know how amazing a player LeBron was, but like watching someone like that do it in your favorite team's jersey, you get a different level of affinity for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. In terms of the ratings being down, and they're down across all sorts of sports, like we mentioned earlier.
The NBA's ratings are legitimately down, but they're not the only sport where ratings are down.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're down in sports that I guess are broadly being considered, caught up in social issues. They're down in sports that aren't in that. Their ratings are down in everything, period. And like ratings have been dropping in terms of the old mechanisms to, measure fan interest and viewer interest, just because the world has changed in the way we consume this stuff. But I was having a Twitter discussion today with Jeff Katz, who some people watching this may know. He used to work with us on 710, doing some hosting stuff like that. He used to work in the movie industry, and we were debating about how much fans not being in the audience actually matters in terms of knocking down ratings, and how much not having fans there hurt the viewer experience. And speaking for myself personally, I don't think it's particularly hard to get used to. And I personally feel like if it's something you are really getting caught up in as an otherwise very engaged fan, I feel like you're looking to be distracted. That is my opinion personally. I'm not saying I don't see it at all, or I don't think that it affects the viewing experience whatsoever. I'm just saying I feel like if you go into this saying, I'm not going to dwell on it, by and large, I don't think you're really going to get caught into it. Again, that's me. But one of the things, though, that it sort of dawned on me in having this back and forth with Jeff, who totally disagrees with me, is there had been this school of thought that sports would not just be extremely popular upon coming back, but also, too, that they would serve as this, event of normalcy. And, they'd be like comfort food for people. And they would take your mind off this pandemic and everything going on. And it sort of dawned on me that in some ways, seeing sports without the fans is a continual reminder of everything that's happening. And in a lot of ways, it reinforces that everything isn't normal. So if you are actually looking for sports as this kind of respite from the pandemic, you're not going to get it, because the presentation is an actual reminder of the pandemic.
No, that's a great point. Actually, I was, I think it was yesterday's Dodgers Braves game, and they have a small segment of fans is it in Dallas that they're playing right now? Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's certainly not San Diego, but and it's kind of weird to see like 10,000 fans in a 50,000 stadium, but like when I think it was Freddie Freeman hit the home run, and you see like this section of fans going wild, I was like, I haven't seen that in months upon months, and it felt normal in a way that like, and I enjoyed the bubble because I'm just going to enjoy basketball on any stage in general, but like it is true. And I think if you want to take something from the ratings, another thing is it's kind of a reminder of how many people are like diehard fans versus people who like to be there for the show. Because when you're talking about a bubble, I mean, it's really for the people who live and breathe with every basket, not the people who are there for the party, because it's not a party in that sense.
Yeah, it did take some of that kind of sense of celebration and eventness out of it. Like, you can't get in. Like, you can't do it. There is no access to what these guys are doing. It felt very isolated. Look, the NBA, I thought, did a great job putting the product on the floor. And obviously, they all deserve credit for 0 positive tests. And this thing went in that regard way better, I think, than anybody thought, to the point that I think we kind of forgot how hard it would be to live in that thing for 5 months or whatever, however long they were there. But it isn't the same. And I don't know what any of this like means, because it's not going to get normal again next year. Like we were talking about this last night, like the irony of like let's say the Dodgers come back against the Braves, which they certainly could. They scored some runs tonight. Like, that was a start.
They were hit away.
Road stuff doesn't mean anything right now. They've been very good and so on and so on. You could have the Lakers, Dodgers, and the Rams all win this year. This could turn out to be the greatest year in Los Angeles sports history without being able to have like one parade.
Yes, I mean it's the best since '88. '88, the Dodgers and the Lakers won that year. I can't remember if anybody else won, but it was a big year that alone. So you're right; it could be, if nothing else, the biggest since '88.
I haven't even thought about that. Actually, I haven't been following as closely. I assume you guys are. There's going to be no parade for the Lakers, right? Are they doing anything of substance? Like, I mean, I saw the video.
They should implement our idea. We've got an idea. We've been pushing this. Okay. I call it the theme park style parade, where basically what you do is you set up these different stations in a very large area, like an area that people can drive through. And you set up different players in the different stations, and you have fans drive past them, and they can just watch different players celebrating. It's like you're reverse engineering the parade, where typically the fans are stationary and the players on the big buses go by them. You make the players stationary, and then you go past them celebrating. Like, again, it's like a theme park ride.
So we'll drive by. It's like everyone can drive by LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Rob Pelinka, and I don't know, Alex Cruz.
Yes, they just wave to you. Like,
yeah, you drive by JR shirtless. You do all that. It's great. It's fun.
I'm not sure this is fun for the guys in the like the actual players on the team, but I think
it's probably horrible for them.
That was boring.
I mean, and it would bring normalcy to LA because you'd get back your regular traffic if something like that happened too. So
yes, yes, it feels
a nice like 4-hour backup on Daman, get out of here.
What if you could end the coronavirus? Daman says, Sam finally admitting on the chat, he says, Sam finally admitting he's a Laker fan now is how we fix the ratings. What if you could end the coronavirus? You just make it go away. That's all you needed to do.
Yes, that's definitely the move. We need to figure that one out right here.
Yeah, but if pledging allegiance to the Lakers would do it, like,
ooh, I don't know. My connection's not working. We should move on to another topic. I'm running out of connection here.
You know what? There are people, and I am 100% serious. There are people presented with the idea of you could eliminate the coronavirus, but all you have to do is become a legitimate diehard fan and pledge your allegiance to the enemy team.
To the rival, yeah.
They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because fans are that ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, some would say that that's what Trump's doing right now with not implementing a bunch of stuff. Anyway, that's a different topic, not for this show. So,
I don't want to know what team he roots for.
God.
whatever team it is, ain't rooting for that one.
We were talking about this a little bit before. Obviously the Lakers, and we can get back into kind of what this season was for them, and kind of your perspective watching them. But one of the things that is, I think, on everybody's mind everywhere, certainly in LA, but even across the NBA, is like how large is this Lakers window now? Because I think people thought, maybe they don't win in the first year, but they've got a couple years, maybe they get one or whatever. But not only do they win, the Lakers dominated the Western Conference in the process and went 12-3 in the Western Conference part of the playoffs. So they did better, I think, than people expected and opened up a little bit more of a gap. And when you talk about the teams that could catch them next year, it's Denver, it's the Clippers, and you start thinking, and it's like, oh yeah, the Warriors, forgot about that. Like how much should people expect from what's coming back next year with Golden State?
I mean, I've had 12 months to walk through every machination of every potential trade they could make and whatever going into next year. So believe me, I've gone through the highs and lows of what they could look like next year. Vegas seems to think positively of them. I think last I saw, they were 3rd or 4th in the title odds. Lakers obviously being 1st as the defending champions, Clippers being 2nd. I think the thing with the Warriors right now is like, okay, they obviously have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. If you believe in motivation in any capacity, they're certainly motivated to prove this was a injury-plagued gap year. And then you throw in the Kevin Durant saga. They all want to prove they can win in a capacity kind of consummate with the name they've created for themselves, and not, they needed Kevin Durant or whatever it may be. With that said, I'm going to ask you guys. I assume you guys are aware Andrew Wiggins is on the roster. Can you name another player on the roster?
Yes, but only because I recently went through the roster. Because in taking a look at what you had there, because I wanted to ask later on about the number 2 pick, and whether your sense is that they would use it versus trying to package it. There are only 4 players on the Warriors who were part of that 2018 championship team: Steph, Klay, Dre, and Kevon Looney. That's it. And that's pretty massive turnover 2 seasons removed from a championship team. Like, even recognizing the team tended to be extremely top heavy in its talent, and the role players would sometimes be interchangeable. That's still a lot of turnover in just 2 years.
So that's kind of where I'm at with them. Do I think there's a path to them competing and winning a title? Absolutely. I think they've proven you can win a championship, or at least compete for one, with the core of Steph, Klay, and Draymond. But, there's a world where they have a terrible offseason, and it's those players and Marquise Chris and a bunch of guys who are, I guess, not, ready for deep playoff basketball, and then they're just kind of toiling somewhere in the middle of the West. There's also a scenario where maybe they trade the second pick for a veteran who's a little more useful from now. Maybe a veteran takes a discount with the mid-level exception. I'm sure there will be a bunch of players who do that, because the NBA's finances in a post-COVID world kind of indicate that, teams aren't going to be spending crazy. So you could see some veterans who maybe would have been looking for bigger contracts taking something smaller. So, I mean, I'm just excited. We're a month away from the draft and 6 weeks from free agency. At least at that point, I'll know what kind of roster we're working with the Warriors, because for the last 6+ months, it's been a lot of, let's discuss for an hour how this player might fit into the roster. I don't know if they can acquire him, but let's just talk about it.
Yeah, you guys actually have spent some time doing that. Like, you went.
What else are you really going to talk about in a Warriors related podcast?
Who are the like, realistically? Who are the people that you can get for the number 2 and whatever?
LaMelo season? Is it LaMelo season?
Does Steve Kerr strike you as a guy who wants to coach LaMelo Ball? Just going to throw it out there.
No.
I think he would be the most surprising acquisition. Like, I would be shocked if he was on the team. But the most common ones have been like the Indiana Pacers are looking to shop Oladipo and Miles Turner. Could maybe work out a trade with their pick for that. Like, nothing as cool as acquiring like Giannis or something like that. But like, that's the type of trade talks that you're hearing buzz about that are realistic.
Do you picture that including like Wiggins being packaged, just because the number 2 pick in terms of matching salaries and stuff like that?
Right. It doesn't work salary wise.
Right.
Yeah, no.
So like, are you picturing them attaching Wiggins?
Yeah, in which case then you're talking about, because Wiggins makes a lot more than both those players, you have to take more back. So this is where it's kind of, you can talk through a million machinations of trades, but like they still have the traded player exception, which is $17 million in salary they could potentially absorb. Who knows if they want to run up a luxury tax like that. I mean, it's in all different directions with them at this point. There's also free agents who are veterans who they could potentially pursue. I mean, they could get someone like Aaron Baines, or, if you're lucky, Serge Ibaka or something like that. Like, these are all useful players. Those are the type of players that I would think are the most likely scenario to end up on the Warriors next year. Like, the possibility that they swing some crazy trade to land like Joel Embiid or something like that, it seems like a 1 in a million, like not happening type of scenario, no matter how much they want to float out there that they're interested in those type of things.
Doc might want to make some changes. You never know.
Oh, we both know exactly how that's going. It's gonna mirror the Lob City Clippers, where everyone knows that the 2 stars don't work, but he won't trade one of them for just 4 or 5 years in a row.
Wiggins for Embiid. Who says no?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not me, but.
And we have a surprise guest, a guest we didn't even expect tonight.
I just wanted to check in on Sam and he seems, I have to admit, he seems very comfortable now knowing that order has been restored. The Lakers are the champions. He's doing NBA lottery, research and draft research and just praying that, they can put together enough to get Miles Turner, maybe they can have a cute little, playoff run or something like that. And I just said, I got to admit, everything feels normal. I've been listening to Sam and Andy on Light Years podcast. Like I listen all the time because I've just forgotten what it feels like to root for a team, and you're just doing draft research, and I lost all my logins to the draft sites and all that, so I just trust Sam and Andy to follow the draft now.
Wins a Mickey Mouse Cup and feels like he's the king of the world. So I don't respond to your texts anymore.
I just lay back and let you guys go back and forth. This is pretty great. Daman Rangoola joining us. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Today is the first night where things are feeling a little quiet. Like I watched the Dodgers game and it was a miserable game until the end, and it's just like, okay, well, now what do we do? It's been such a nonstop kind of run, and it ended in like this euphoria, and then it's all gone. And there was like this buildup of months and months, and it's like, okay, well, now what? Like, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
We got Tuesday Night Football.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about the pandemic is it screws with the NFL so much. Like they have to kind of like put football everywhere.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Every night now.
I mean, it does feel like the Dodgers are doing their best to prevent any type of super spreader celebrations.
God.
They're almost being just
they're just trying to give
benevolent to the city.
They're just trying to give you guys a feeling of normalcy with October collapse. So.
Oh God, it's funny. Like the sports calendar and just the calendar in general is completely screwed up right now, and you're getting used to all these things happening at once, and your kids are doing school from home and all this different shit. But the one thing that we all know in October is that it's Fire Dave Roberts season. Like every year in October, it is Fire Dave Roberts season. And that's the one thing we can count on. Because if you're on
Major League Baseball for it being able, for all of us to be able to keep us on track, at least with that.
Yes. I mean, death, taxes, and everybody yelling for Dave Roberts to be fired in October.
It's so true. I was watching that game and I'm like, I've seen this game and I've seen it like every year for the last 3 years. I know this game very well. And it is the most normal we've probably felt in a while. That's a good point.
Yeah, there's something comforting about it. Watching Dodger fans get really pissed off at Dave Roberts for pitching decisions. Like this in a weird way, as tortured as for Dodger fans, make them feel like everything's going to be all right. Like the world is going to go back to normalcy because this is the world they knew before the pandemic.
I do want to point something out here. Like, the respect I have for Daman, who is like, he's like Batman. Like you throw up the signal, like, hey, and look at this, he's got the setup ready, the microphone.
Oh yeah, listen, we're not messing around.
So, I guess this is true. If you ever just need a guest on something,
just send a message. Yeah. Sam won't let me on his podcast, so this is how I talk to him.
Well, last couple of times he made an appearance, it was we had to edit some stuff out. It got very flagrant. And, it was even explicit for us. We can have that.
I would be very insulted by any podcaster who had Aaron Larsoul on, but not you. So That just shows a certain level
Aaron,
of.
I think Aaron might have cooked something or somewhere. He must have shown Sam a plate to bribe himself on.
Dude,
His plates are.
Oh my God. The cooking Aaron Lasoul
he
has
just
been
played
doing.
up the Bay Area card.
It's been unbelievable. Like it's been like the stuff you look at, it's like restaurant quality.
It is.
Like,
It's incredible. He's like, I've talked to him a couple of times to him, just like, how do you even take a picture? And he just, he's like, those super talented people that they frustrate me even more when they're humble. Like, I'd rather Aaron be super just like, yeah, I do this better than you could ever do it. I'd prefer that versus him just going like, oh, I just put it in front of the sunlight to take a picture. It comes out really easily. Like the way
you guys really believe he cooks that. I mean, I'm pretty sure those are from Yelp. I've seen those. I've been stalking restaurants. I've seen a few of those photos.
Like, have you ever gone to what's the name of the? I'm blanking now. The name of the photography where everybody goes to get their stock photos. Like what?
Right. Like Getty Images or something.
Yeah, like have you ever gone to Getty
Right,
Images and seen the exact same things that Lasoul is cooking? That he's
No,
making himself?
now we got
notice the cropping. Notice it's a little off center because it cropped.
There's
off
always a watermark for everything that he makes. I never thought about it before, but it's a little bit suspicious. So
I mean, some of the plate choices, like no one has those kind of plates around their house. Come on, man. No.
It's unbelievable. Like he's put that time to use. It also reinforces that dude has no kids. You don't get to do that with kids.
No.
So you were saying though, Sam, with the Warriors, like what do you expect from them coming up? Like, because I was looking at, it's already now since the championship's 48 hours old, we're already looking at the 2021 season. And there's
the past, guys.
Right, and there's the too early power rankings that ESPN and SI have put out. The Warriors are getting
5 minutes of them winning a title.
Yes,
power rankings.
Well, I'm sure that was pre-written.
The Warriors have been getting a fair amount of respect for a team that nobody has seen really do anything in a while, and I get it, but I also look at them going, I don't quite know what they are.
It's interesting, right? Because like you talk to anyone around the team or you just read reports or anything, and it's just constant like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson look really good in their workouts. And I don't really know what to make of that because there's no real precedent for pandemic shuts down and 2 perennial all-stars are doing individualized workouts for 9 months in a row. Like, I don't even know what to...
That is a very specific template. Like,
yes, exactly.
That doesn't exist is reasonable, I think.
Yeah, it's like there's no template for it. So, like I said, they will, if they're healthy. For me, my bigger concern with them would be about health at this point. At this point, we've seen Klay tear his ACL, and Steph, for lack of a better word, he seems to perennially pick up nagging injuries that rule him out for periods of time. Like obviously this year he broke his hand, and then they weren't necessarily in a rush to bring him back when they were 10-40. So, but it's one of those things where that hand might have healed a little faster if they were a contending team. But with that said, those are my bigger concerns with the team. They're not old, but they are. I don't know. They're just an unknown with health at this point, I guess.
I mean, they sort of feel old, though. Like, maybe it's because they've been around. Like, I think of them as an older team than they probably are, especially adding LaMelo Ball.
Yes.
And
James Wiseman. Let's get it right. Another player no one has seen play.
I can't start. You can't expect me to start naming other college basketball players. One college basketball player, and he didn't even go to college. I know LaMelo Ball. That is the only player I can name who was in this year's draft.
But just to step in here, I still fear the Warriors. I mean, I understand that we haven't seen this version of the Warriors in some time now, but when has this version of the Warriors healthy? When's the last time they lost a series fair and square? It's been a while. And to me, the DNA of
Obama's first
the
term.
championship, right. And
yeah.
And so the sort of the know-how, the championship DNA, the actual gameplay of Steph and Clay, I would probably worry even more about injuries to the Steph and Clay injuries is Draymond's conditioning. He did not look like Draymond last year. And that's fine. We can chalk it up to kind of like the Rajon Rondo high IQ. Well, I'm not going to give a crap if, it's not to win, right? It's like, I could see Draymond.
Draymond was smart enough to realize I don't need to be in shape this season.
Right.
Like, that's where the high IQ came in.
Right. Exactly. So that's probably the thing I would worry about most. But I trust Steph, Clay, and Draymond over a lot of cores in the NBA. And when push comes to shove,
them more than James Harden?
Yeah, well, that's the common bond that Sam and I have. We will trust James Harden at any opportunity. If we ever get into an argument, we can just always bring it back down to James Harden
when things get too hot.
but
at least we can agree on this guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, Steph, Clay, Draymond. Unless they lose, I'm not going to believe they're going to lose
all over again.
Yeah.
No.
But it's that group, the things that the group has done together. It reminds me of the Spurs. We've had this conversation, Sam, where the Spurs, yes, they had their ups and downs throughout the run with Tim Duncan, but you always knew they were going to be a threat, and they were always lingering in the title conversation. They might not win every year, but they have that core of players. They have that core of a coaching staff, a program, a system, something that they stand for. And Steph is very Duncan-like in that way, where I trust Steph to be the leader. I trust Steph to kind of modulate his game to fit in whatever teammates are surrounding him. And having those kinds of pillars, the Warriors are always going to, they're always going to be a threat to me in some way.
So then you take that to the next thing, which is like, I feel the same way. I feel like you can pencil them in to at least be in the conversation. And then it comes down to what they do around the rest of them. Because Lakers won this year. So inevitably, you're thinking,
say that again?
If you're going to win, if you're gonna win the title, you're gonna have to go through them, right? And so then comes the question: how are you guarding LeBron and Anthony Davis? And Draymond's part of that equation, but there's kind of a gaping hole at the center position, and that seems semi-important if you're going to deal with Anthony Davis, I would assume. And so this is where it's, it's kind of a question mark with them. I have no doubt Steph and Clay and Draymond will come back with some semblance of punch and some semblance of wanting to get revenge. But, if it's a rookie guarding Anthony Davis, that just wouldn't be the ideal way to necessarily deal with that, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sam, did anybody on this roster this year, the sort of randos that were
the Santa Cruz Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, because there were guys who periodically put up decent numbers, had some good games here. Are any of these people actually going to be useful going forward in terms of filling out the rest of a rotation?
Sure, like Eric Paschall was their best rookie last year. He was a second-round pick. I mean, I would – quintessential late first, early second round pick who looks good. Like, could he play a role like what Kyle Kuzma did for the Lakers this year? Sure. Is he going to, establish himself as like a superstar? No. Yeah, exactly. So like that's like really the only one. Like everyone else, I don't know. Like, do you really like Marquise Chris, Jordan Poole? Like, I don't see a scenario where the Warriors counting on them to play like big minutes in the Western Conference Finals instills any sort of confidence. Like, they just kind of shuffled through guys. Maybe one of them pops this year. You never know. Maybe Jordan Poole off of a bad rookie year turns out to be a nice second-year player. I wouldn't count on it, but it's at this point I'm looking at their roster as like 5 players who we know will be in the rotation next year, and like 5 players they have to find somewhere in free agency or trade.
Wiggins is old. Wiggins, assuming that he's not packaged with a number 2 pick or something like that, he's ultimately it's a cliche, but he's ultimately that X factor in terms of like, okay, what's the upside of this team? Like, whatever concerns you have about health with the core 3 guys, Steph is 32. Like he's, Clay is, I think, 31. Like these guys are all getting 30. These guys are all getting older than I think, if nothing else, I realized.
Sure.
And the team is not deep in terms of proven guys. So
that's sort of what I was asking about the Marquise Chris's and the
right.
But like, I mean, if we're honest, their roster currently looks like the Portland Trailblazers. It's like, well, you like that backcourt. You're not really sure about anything else on it. The only difference is we haven't gone through the draft and the free agency period. And, so this is where, like, at least locally, there's a lot of faith that they will swing some sort of trade and make some sort of moves. And a lot of that's giving benefit of the doubt to what they've done for the last decade. And that's kind of how it goes, right? Like when you build a roster that goes to 5 straight finals, fans and the local media is going to give you the benefit of the doubt until you prove you don't deserve it, right? So that's kind of that's at least the attitude I'm seeing up here, and that's kind of the attitude I have at this point.
Or Joe Lacob gets impatient,
right?
I mean, you guys complained this year, and I understood where you were coming from with Steve Kerr's coaching. To where I don't think he probably maximized the actual players on the roster. They were playing a style that was more conducive to the team that was making those title runs. But because of that, do you think that there's a better chance that some of those guys can contribute this upcoming year, even though it probably hurt you in the wins and losses last year?
To be clear, those complaints were in the early part of the season before Steph broke his hand and Draymond decided he was going to take an injury year too. So at that point, like, I mean, it's not, because it feels like a long time ago they had D'Angelo Russell on the roster.
Yeah, I want to look it up because I forgot whether or not they still did. Like, I was so confused by everything. When we were doing doing a little research or getting reading up a little to talk about tonight's show, I think we'll probably do a lot more NBA. But like, I was like, a little NFC West. Rams were in San Francisco this weekend. I had to double check. It was last year that the 49ers were in the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
It's crazy.
They've decided, like your Rams, to follow the post Super Bowl everything falls apart season, because that's what's going on with them this year. Right down to the offensive line being terrible.
With the worst quarterback, though.
Yeah, pretty comparable.
How dare you?
I mean, Jimmy G's handsome. I mean, he's got that going for him. Like, Brian and I actually have a theory that you can't succeed at the NFL level as a quarterback without being handsome, because you're not going to be responded to
people
as a leader.
Ugly people.
They don't, especially at that level, because all these football players are former BMOCs. They're all used to being the biggest deal and the biggest jock and the most popular guys. So in order to grab their attention, it's going to take more than talent. Like, you need to be physically appealing in your efforts to get people to rally around you. Because I challenge you to come up with a really good, successful, ugly quarterback.
Ooh, now we get deep into it.
Yeah, now I gotta accept the challenge.
Or even just slightly below replacement level in terms of handsomeness.
Just average. They're average, but I mean, genuinely, God.
Are you saying Andy Dalton would be a Pro Bowler if he just, he had better, a better jawline? Your anti-ginger bias is showing.
All redheads are awkward looking. Andy Dalton's facial structure, there's nothing wrong with what Andy Dalton looks like. He's a perfectly handsome man.
Yeah, you know what, Andy, you might be onto something. Actually, I don't trust ugly people either.
Is this why Derek Carr has had issues with the Raiders locker room? I mean, I don't know. We could be onto a theory here.
Again,
he had the best game of his career last week.
Last thing is a supermodel. I'm really working on my share screen stuff. Of what we're doing here, so I'm just a lot of this is practice, but this is Andy Dalton. Let me find Andy Dalton here. Where'd he go? He's fine, perfectly reasonably handsome man. There's nothing, So
the haircut's a little. I don't know.
Again, you're getting lost in the weeds here. I am 100% convinced that Tom Brady had Garoppolo traded because he couldn't handle a better looking quarterback on the roster. Like that is absolutely the reason that Jimmy G got moved.
The O linemen weren't responding to Tom the way they were to the second string snaps. He's like, he's got to go. Bring in Brian Hoyer.
Looking at the sidelines, be like, "Oh, Tom, I know you called that play, but does Jimmy agree with it? Let's take a look."
It's just but like you look at that. Like Jarrett Stidham is a perfectly reasonable looking person, but he's not Tom Brady. And now Brady. I who's the backup in Tampa?
Jameis, right? No. It's not.
No, Jameis is in New Orleans.
Jameis in New Orleans. I'm sorry.
Who is the backup quarterback to? I think it's the Elephant Man.
I don't know. I have no idea. But I mean, it's true though. Like,
is that who
is it Blaine Gabbert?
Oh yeah, it's Blaine Gabbert. Yeah,
I don't remember what he looks like.
Gabbert is still a backup quarterback in the NFL.
So this may just speak very poorly on me, but that's like my ideal situation that I would want to be in is like a backup quarterback on a team with like a Hall of Fame quarterback, where I know I don't really have to play, but I'm getting paid a lot of money. I'm on the sidelines, and I can tell anybody that I'm a professional quarterback. Like that's my ideal job.
No, you've got this close to right. Okay, you want to be third string. Because
even better.
Backup, there's a chance you might get in.
That's true.
Third string, all you ever are, unless you're just some veteran who's been in the league for 15 years and everyone knows you're hanging on. If you're young and you're the third string guy, everyone wants to see you.
Andy, we're on the same page, man. Give me like $800K. Yes. I'll look prepared. I'll have the play sheet ready, like just memorized. But I don't want to do anything else. Like
exactly.
I'll get on a Peloton during practice, just show people I'm getting my cardio in, and that's it. I'm out.
Exactly.
Give me my money.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just saying, it's the backup quarterback, long-term backup quarterback for what was it? It was who was it? Jim Sorgi, who was the backup to Peyton Manning for 11 years in Indianapolis. That was the best job. And so the guy played 2 preseason games a year.
Yep.
Held a clipboard, and probably you guys keep talking. I don't look to see how much Jim.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to stay in shape. Like at that point, stay in shape, stay ready. But you also know the guy that you're playing behind, you're never going to be as good at, and also Peyton never gets hurt.
Exactly.
So
and if he does, and you screw up, nobody's expecting anything from you.
Exactly. Like you have to stay.
I'm the backup.
You have to stay ready. But you don't really have to stay ready. I mean, I guarantee, I remember one time Jim Sorgi got into a game because, I don't know, something briefly happened to Peyton. And I swear to God, you could see that he was like, I have never read this playbook in my life. Like, I have.
Can I just keep handing it off? Yeah, just keep handing it off 3 plays in a row.
He's like, what? I have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to be doing out here. I don't even know who half these guys are. I haven't met most of my linemen. Like that's a great job. But Jim, we were talking about Jimmy G. Like I remember that Super Bowl, my wife, I had to leave the room because she was just going on and on about he is so good looking. I'm like, yeah, he's a good looking dude. And she's like, no, but look at him. Like the camera loves him. Like it just zooms. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. I left the room and I had no argument. She was right. She was totally right.
Yeah, I can't find him. He made, I think, I'm seeing enough stuff put together. He made he was his backup quarterback. He was Manning's backup quarterback for 6 years. He made something like $5.5 million.
That's the dream. That is the dream.
That is a really.
You have a successful podcast. How long does it take you to make $5.5 million? Is that 6 months? A year?
Silicon Valley money just hits different.
Yes, exactly.
I hear this.
About to look up if Jimmy was even playing this weekend. That was going to be my next question here. You guys got me thinking here because it's unclear if he's playing.
From what I saw, they're hopeful because it's a big game. It's against the Rams this weekend. This is a really big game.
They're also 2-3. They've thrown a couple games away. The season's going to get away from them very quickly, very quick if they don't, win.
You're at that sort of. That borderline where 2 and 3, you're still. You win a game and you're 500.
You're right there, yeah. Particularly since there's 16 teams in the playoffs this year.
Right,
so.
Everybody gets a car. Everybody gets a participation ribbon this year. and the NFC East is a dumpster fire. So like you're only getting one team out of there. So there is space. Like I don't know, 4 teams from the NFC West make the playoffs. I haven't done the math, but it might be possible.
Yeah. This is the year. You know, it's interesting. Has there been like a proper exploration of why the Super Bowl hangover hits so consistently to the team that loses? Like the Chiefs are looking fine. I'm confident they'll be right there at the end of the
they'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it feels like the Super Bowl hangover for the losing team is basically happens every single time.
Well, I mean, the Rams. I mean, I've been critical of the Rams, and I was definitely suspicious of how good they'd be this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, they didn't suck last year.
Yeah, that's true.
But they didn't go 4-12.
No, but they did miss the playoffs, so they did kind of. It took them 2 months to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, they missed the playoffs, but they missed the playoffs with a 9-7 record.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but they didn't look right. Like they won games. They won a lot of games that. I mean, I love like Aaron Donald, and I've loved having a coach like Sean McVay because it's you feel so much confidence when you have a coach like that. You're like, all right, well, he'll maximize what we have, whatever we have.
Well, he's hot. I mean, you know, he's a hottie. I mean,
he's a hottie. You know what?
Yeah.
There's something here, man. Now it's clicking. Now it's clicking.
And then you want to back up even further.
Meanwhile, best coach in the league, Andy Reid, who is objectively the most attractive man in the NFL. So,
there's a word for
the theory holds true, my friends.
Well, I mean, look, and it's the executive thing. I mean, you got Sean McVay combined with Les Snead, who's also a very handsome man.
That's
John
true.
Lynch in San Francisco, handsome man. Like
Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, it's part of the reason, by the way, that's part of the reason why the NFC West is so damn hard.
It's the
like
best.
Everybody's really good looking. I mean, you've got the best of the best.
You can be outside and exercise. You don't have to be shut indoors all the time. That was like 9 minutes of hot NFL executive and quarterback talk.
This is also what Sam and I text about, so this is working out perfectly.
Absolutely, it was just running
Cats
down
out of the bag. Who do you guys? Did I freeze or did everybody else? I hate when this happens.
No, we hear you. We see you.
We hear you. You're here.
Oh no.
Maybe he can't hear us. I think Brian can't hear us because we can hear him. I'm going to text him and let him know we can hear him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Everything's fine on my end.
Everything's fine now. Okay.
Okay.
Who do you? I like to live in a world where the Warriors are good. I think the Warriors are fun. I love Steph. I love Clay. I love Draymond even more now that he's been doing the commentary. I think most Lakers fans are kind of more like they don't think of the Warriors as the Clippers. But when you start like power ranking the teams that can make a run at them next year, because there was a gap. We talked about this earlier in the show. There was a real gap between the Lakers and everyone else. Who is it? Is it the Clippers? Like, do we expect more from them, or do we still not know? Who gets the benefit of the doubt next year that Lakers fans are convinced the Lakers didn't get this year?
I mean, I guess I would say the Clippers in theory, but just given the way, like, so full discretion, I had my money was on the Clippers winning the title this year. I thought they were better than the Lakers. And then, all year the Lakers played better than them, and I kind of gave the Clippers a benefit of the doubt, mostly because of Kawhi Leonard. And, you do this funny thing where it's like, because Kawhi is no nonsense and just kind of a stoic guy that goes about his business, you attribute that quality to the whole team. When in reality, probably should have taken red flags with half their roster deciding to leave the bubble for no reason and go get wings. And like just all these things that kind of point to, let's just say, the not being as locked in as the Lakers were, right? So
a fundamental lack of seriousness.
Yeah, there was a fundamental lack of seriousness with them. So like part of me thinks, okay, they not only did they not win, but they kind of lost in very embarrassing fashion. Like they didn't even lose to the Lakers. they lost to the Denver Nuggets in the second round. Potentially that should be the kick they need to actually live up to their talent potential. Because at least on paper, them and Brooklyn are the two teams who have the best rosters to compete with the Lakers as of today. I guess that's the other one. Depending what you think of Kevin Durant's return from his Achilles injury, that's another team that, they have. It's not just, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Like, they have a handful of pretty good players there that if it gels correctly, that team could be very dangerous. So those would be the ones that I would potentially look at as, assuming there's no wild roster moves in the offseason.
Yeah, that KD Kyrie, because you still got Karis LeVert, you've got, Spencer. There's some players on that team.
Right.
But man, that KD Kyrie vibe that's already coming out, that's gonna be a weird locker room.
I mean, I guess a lot of it
need a coach.
Well, I was going to say a lot of it comes down to like how many head coaches they have, and I think in some ways, like, is their best head coach? Does the schedule break down to where their best head coach happens to be coaching against the best opponents? Because if their weakest of their 7 head coaches happens to be going up against the Lakers one night, that's a loss. Against the Bucks, that's a loss. I mean, like if they don't schedule this out correctly, they could become problematic. Like it's going to be a lot to juggle that most teams don't have to deal with. Most loser teams only have one head coach. The Nets have 7, which on one hand could be an advantage, but it takes more scheduling. Like
you need numbers to like the next level. So many. You
need a date. Speaking of coaching, I saw a crazy stat yesterday that really puts in perspective what both Frank Vogel just accomplished and what Steve Kerr has done in his career. It was from Steve Ashburner, the longtime NBA writer. There have been 332 head coaches in the history of the NBA. Only 34 of them have won at least one championship.
Oh, damn.
And 6 of them, Phil Jackson with 11, Red Auerbach with 9, John Kundla with 5, Pat Riley with 5, Pop with 5, Steve Kerr with 3, account for 38 of those championships, just like a little bit over half of all time.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.
Like, and then when you think about it, like they all come from like 2 coaching trees, pretty much.
Yeah.
They're all like they're all disciples of like 2 to 3 coaches. So it's I mean, but now you got the Nets with 14 coaches. So
they're their own
shake things up.
Like that is that vibe is the exact opposite of the AD LeBron thing. I can't imagine going to work every day and that's in the line. I'm not saying they're bad people. I don't know these people. But they are weird.
There's a common thing. So, setting aside the snark, and by the way, watching the Clippers lose was one of the most enjoyable fan experiences I've ever had. So, setting aside the snark of that, I think one of the key things that revealed itself that playoff round was a lack of a locker room structure. Where if you look at Kawhi, I also give Kawhi the benefit of the doubt, right? I can admit as a Laker fan, coming into that season, I also predicted the Clippers were going to win because I thought Kawhi and Paul George are exactly the kind of modern duo that you need to succeed. And I didn't expect also Anthony Davis to turn into Kawhi from mid-range in the playoffs. Like that's a separate thing. But Kawhi, everywhere he succeeded in a locker room and an organization that already had an existing power structure in place, an existing sort of culture in place, and he fit in.
No nonsense team.
Right. He fit in.
Yeah.
He was sort of neutral from a kind of rah-rah perspective, but he fit in and he went out and executed like a stone cold killer, right? Just like automatic when the team needed him.
It was Apple time.
Clippers, though, when he comes to the Clippers, now he's the leader. And there's a vacuum in this team. There's a leadership vacuum, and who's filling it? Nobody. And so what we saw in the playoffs is when they got punched in the face, there was nobody to answer. There was nobody to rally the team together. And while Doc being fired makes sense, there were some decisions that that he could have made better. I also think at some point you have to look at, is this locker room, does it have like a strong structure where if LeBron and Anthony Davis don't buy into Frank Vogel and his vision from day one and buy in on defense on day one, set the example for every single player on that roster from the first person to the 12th person. Without that, well, the Lakers might have gone through a similar thing by the end of the season where they're not ready for that kind of a situation. And we look at Denver. Denver's had a team that understands that Jokic is the number one, Murray is the number two. There actually was some tension with the rookie is escaping my head right now. Who
Michael
wanted
Porter
to,
Jr.
Michael Porter Jr., right? And that was like the first sort of sign of schism, but they kind of handled it in-house. They had a structure, a coach they trusted, like they had a very established locker room. They squashed it. They persevered over the Clippers. And I look at Brooklyn and, I trust KD and Kyrie as basketball players, but they also have benefited in their careers where they've succeeded with titles, coming into a situation or having such a strong leadership where that was LeBron's team in Cleveland, right? He didn't like it, but everybody in that locker room knew exactly what that kind of hierarchy of that team was. And with Kevin Durant, he was coming into already a title team, a title coach, and a very clear establishment of, okay, Draymond is sort of the emotional leader, Steph is the offensive engine, and everything goes around it. And so I look at Brooklyn with skepticism because of that. I'm curious what the Clippers are going to do beyond, okay, you're getting a new coach. I think Ty Lue should be the one to fit there because maybe he could establish sort of more of a locker room presence in that way. But it's going to
he's shown
somebody in the locker room.
Afraid to,
right.
To,
somebody in that locker room.
They might need that, yeah.
But
somebody in the locker room is going to need to step up.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Dan, but Sam, that's a reason to boost the Warriors into next year.
Right.
Because
I am very bullish on the Warriors. Yeah, I'm very bullish on the Warriors for that reason.
So the only thing I'll say with those teams is, well, I guess we don't know. If I was running the Clippers, I would probably be looking to trade a little bit around the margins with some of the players who may have caused more issues than they're worth.
Role players like Paul George?
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe Lou Williams or something like that. So when I look at someone like the Clippers or the Nets, I try not to make the same mistake I made with the Lakers last year. Like part of my reason for thinking the Clippers would be better than the Lakers last year was, it's not that I thought Kawhi and Paul George were better than LeBron and AD. I thought it was close enough. I just thought like from man 3 through 10, the Clippers were significantly better. Turned out not to be the case for a variety of reasons. All I'm getting at here is all it takes is tweaking around the margins, and that can go such a long way in cleaning up the chemistry of a team. Because the biggest thing that stood out with the Lakers this year was, their chemistry was somewhat reminiscent of like the first couple of years when the Warriors were good, where it's like these guys seem like they really like playing with each other and hanging out with each other and that sort of thing. And those things are rare. Those things turn overnight. But it's even rare having the talent of Kawhi Leonard or Kevin Durant. So all I'm getting at is, if I have a player like that on my roster, like maybe I might not like the way the construct of the team works, but you can always fix around that. You can't just find another guy who's 7 feet tall who shoots like that, for example.
Look, to some degree, the Clippers' issues, assuming, let's just say they end up keeping Montrezl Harrell, they bring back JaMychal Green, like they bring it back largely intact with the players that matter. Some of their issues could actually get solved by them really taking a look at what happened and just saying, we need to get our shit together. Yep. Like we wasted a real opportunity.
Absolutely.
And all of us, assuming all of us care and all of us really want to win a championship, a lot of this can actually get fixed if they all just decided we're going to fix it. And all, guys like, depending on, we've talked with guys like Jovan Buha and other people who cover the team,
right?
Guys like Montrez and Lou and Pat Beverly, who were there when the Clippers were building that foundation. And, they gave the Warriors a good series in 2019. Right. Like they played them hard and, they built an identity from that. those guys need to accept the fact that we've got now two legitimate, if you want to call Kawhi Leonard a superstar and Paul George a perennial all-star, we've got those guys and they're better than us. So we need to accept that things have changed. And then guys like Kawhi and Paul George need to accept that we need to find a way to lead this team better because we didn't do a good enough job with it. But if they're all serious about that, some of these issues can work themselves out because the pieces are there. There's a reason that all of us thought they could win a championship.
Yep. And that's kind of where I'm at with them. Like the way they went out this year, they're either going to go one of two directions next year. They're either going to look at themselves in the mirror and kind of live up to the paper expectations we all had, or Kawhi Leonard is walking in free agency and it's going to be a complete joke in the following summer and whatever. Yeah, yes. I mean, it's going one of two directions. They're either going to, whether they beat the Lakers or not is to be seen, but they'll either be like a serious version of what they were or just completely implode. So,
one more thing before we let you guys go. This is a great question from Ahmed Yusuf 18. The West is stacked next year. 12 teams expect to make the playoffs. We're already putting the Warriors in, which means somebody's got to go. Yep. And New Orleans theoretically is getting better. Like there's some, Phoenix went 8-0 in the bubble for whatever that means or whatever it could be. Who doesn't make the playoffs next year?
I'll start with who I think is going to be the worst in the West, and then we can maybe work our way up. I'm so down on whatever Minnesota's doing. I think that the version of Cat and D'Lo together is not going to work out, and it upsets me that the Warriors have their pick. I don't know what they're going to do with that one, but I really think that they're going to be like the worst team in the West. Only also because the West is so good. Like in relatively speaking, they'll probably be at the bottom.
Worst in the West would make the 8th seed in the East. That sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
I mean, there's not a single team. I'm looking at the standings right now just to make sure I don't forget anyone. There's not a single team in the West who's tanking next year. Like
maybe
Minnesota.
the Thunder.
Maybe the Thunder. Yeah, but not until they trade Chris Paul. Yeah. Until then, I guess they would be my pick for the team who falls out of the playoffs because if they do trade Chris Paul, they're at least making a tactical decision, like we're taking a step back.
But they'll still play too hard.
They'll be plucky. They're I can't see a world in which a Thunder team is, I don't know, 20-62. They're just not built that way.
I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a great player. I really like Darius Baisley. I thought he had some really good moments in the playoffs. Like Dort could be like Lou Dort.
Yeah, they're gonna be a nasty team. They're gonna be a nasty team to play.
I mean, he could be like a sort of a poor man's Artest. Or maybe even like a middle class Artest. Yeah. I mean,
San Antonio, the third worst team in the conference next year.
Maybe
that feels blasphemous. It doesn't it doesn't matter who's on their roster. They're going to be annoyingly efficient in some capacity.
What about our old friend Luke Walton and the Kings?
They just never seem like a team that's going to get their shit together, do they?
Right.
It
seems like they now have a real front office for the first time in a while, post Vladdy, but it's gonna be a while. It feels like the locker room was not together at all last year, so I don't know what's gonna.
I mean, Buddy Hield is publicly trashing Luke. Right. That doesn't help.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
I wonder if he's gonna be a Warrior, Sam.
Luke, we're bringing Luke back too.
Luke and Buddy.
They were pretty bad this year, and everybody got hurt. So I mean, if they get through, they have enough talent on the roster. If they just stay healthy, they could threaten to be a 500 team, which isn't great, but that's not trash.
I still think they would be a playoff team in the East, which kind of speaks to the disparity. That's the funny thing. I'm looking at him, right? Like De'Aaron Fox is really good. Like he
is really good.
The fact that the West has like 10 all-star caliber guards just means he gets lost in the shuffle. But yeah, I mean, I guess who's the worst in the West? I mean, you might be right. It might be Minnesota, but they're not tanking. I expect them to do something. You don't trade your pick pretty much unprotected and then do nothing in the offseason. They've better or worse, committed to whatever the hell they're doing.
All right, we're all still avoiding the question here, which is who drops out. I mean, the obvious candidate is the Thunder.
Okay, I'll give one that I think drops out. Houston.
Houston.
Ooh.
I think Houston drops out. I think they are so pot committed in a bad direction. And the reason I did not believe in them at all heading into the bubble, like I just didn't buy into them, is they're incapable of making adjustments. Like their team is built in such a specific way that you can't fundamentally change anything. Like their only real adjustment they can do, I mean, you can scheme things a little bit differently, whatever, but they can't fundamentally change anything. Like, we saw the Lakers, they would vary what they would do in terms of size, or, they would tinker with the lineup, stuff like that. Houston can do a little bit schematically, but ultimately they're the same team on the floor at all times. They just have to execute at their highest level every single minute they're on the floor, and that leaves you too little margin for error. Westbrook could end up with what seems, unfortunately, because I love Russ, with inevitable injuries. They're a very thin roster beyond their redundancies. I could see them falling out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listen. You're speaking Sam I's language right now. So
we heard about that
trashing the
earlier.
Rockets. Yeah, trashing the Rockets, no problem here. But still, even looking at that, I mean, so my counter is that what you're talking about is conducive to still having regular season success, because as much as James Harden can be frustrating, he's still a top, in terms of just an offensive player, top 5 offensive player.
I would argue he's more frustrating because of how talented he is. Like it's like he repeats the same type of playoff failure every year, which is just far more egregious given what he's capable of.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Players that frustrate me the most, and I know Sam and I talk about these same players all the time, are the players that we know can be really, really, really good. Like if James Harden implemented some of what Steph Curry does off ball, that Houston Rockets team becomes like 50% harder to guard in the playoffs. That's
it. Like not being out of shape in the playoffs would be a great start for him. Like I don't know how he gained 10 pounds or 20 pounds in the bubble. What was that?
You sound like every teacher who ever give Andy a report card. You could be so much better than what you're doing.
Well, my response was always, look, I agree. So if you agree and I'd agree, I don't see any reason for me to bust my ass doing this work. Like all my teachers never realized the way to motivate me was just, dude, you're an idiot. Like you're lucky to be getting grades this good. Like you're an absolute moron. Like that would have motivated me. But telling me, I know you're really smart. If you applied yourself, you could get the grades. I'm like, shit, I'll take your word for it. I don't need to actually do it. I'm totally happy with your diagnosis.
Shaq and Andy both only work on company time.
Exactly.
No off work. No off
exactly.
work. Exactly.
I make A's when they matter. Like Shaq with free throws. That's the way I thought about it.
I saw somebody on the chat point out, like, Porzingis is still banged up. Obviously that hurts Dallas's chances to really rise up in the conference. But this is incredible. Like, Memphis should be a little bit better with another year of Ja and Jackson. Like that. Just
given how tough the West is, I could see Memphis still kind of being where they landed this year,
close
to the playoffs, but not. But yeah, they're going to be good, and they're going to rack up wins. I'm looking at where these losses are going to pile up. I don't know who's going to. Yeah.
And did you guys see that there's real talk of kind of a division heavy schedule, so basically to limit travel, because so in other words, we're talking about like 10 Laker Warrior games, 10 Warrior Clipper games, Laker Clippers. So it's even worse because I guess Sacramento's an easy game, but even Phoenix is kind of plucky and tough. Easier, sure. It all of that plays to ESPN's gonna let us see the Knicks versus the Wizards 100 times next year, which no one wants because it's at 4 p.m. But it's, I don't know, if they go with that kind of schedule, that really hurts.
The Celtics and the Nets next year with that kind of schedule are going to win 70 games each. They'll split the games to play with each other and win every other game.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke, honestly. The disparity every year someone tells me oh, the East is on the rise. And then I look at it, it's like, no, there's one team on the rise. That's all you're talking about, guys.
Well, if they do it that way, like if they do it like that, trying to consolidate travel, which I totally understand. Like,
Right.
I mean, we're looking at the realities of a pandemic that is not likely going to be solved by then.
Sure.
If you do something like that, then they really ought to consider just straight seating, like by record, whatever.
Yeah,
because I mean, if you're really making the West play against itself that much, and the East play against itself that much, then you really there has to be somehow
I'm still not going to win more than 20 games in that type of schedule.
I'm a really old man with that seating idea, though. The last thing, like, it just offends me so much to imagine a Celtics-Lakers series that occurs before the finals. And that's the single reason why I still fight against that. But logically speaking, yeah, something like that would make sense. But just, I can't stomach that kind of a series.
I just have to say, Andy, I don't accept the premise of what you're saying because, as we all know, the virus is going to disappear.
That's true. Hey, we got to trust our leaders, right? They want what's best for us, so it's gone.
Well, it's my understanding by then we'll all be immune to it after we've all caught it. So,
hey, many great people are saying,
The best people are saying that it will not disappear.
Yes.
All right, this was fun. Sam, I hope you don't mind. We had people crash your party. It was just too easy.
Yeah, sorry, Sam.
Only because it's Dom, and I'll accept it.
We'd love to have you guys back another time. This was a really fun. We went quad box, which is something that Andy and I have been meaning to experiment with.
There we go.
Everybody loves a good quad box, and let's see here. We should promote what else is coming. Sam, you've got the Light Years podcast
on the Blue Wire Network.
On the Blue Wire Network. Would you like to promote something?
Would I like to promote something there? No, you guys just did it for me.
Yeah. I was talking to Daman.
Follow me on Twitter.
That's it? All right.
Tell them how. Tell them.
At Damanr, DAMANR. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. This was fun.
Tomorrow night will be
fun.
either a really fun show for people or a really sad show. Either way, we'll be looking a little bit of Dodgers stuff with John Weissman, who does just a fantastic job covering the Dodgers for years, knows more about that team than just about anybody. I know Lindsay Theory on Thursday will get back to the NFL and the NFC West and all the Rams stuff. And Friday, Gustavo Arellano. That'll be a really great show. Andy tweeted out a story he wrote today about voting in Orange County and the political dynamics down there that is just fascinating. So we'll get into all that stuff for the rest of the week. Thanks again to Sam Esfandiari and to Daman Rangoola. This was tons of fun. We'll see everybody tomorrow night.
Danke,
Appreciate it, guys.